Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. thelostart.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be a guest, tell your veteran story, discuss your veteran business or organization. Email The Lost Art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tillvalhallaproject.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Today's episode is brought to you by TrumpShirt.com. TrumpShirt.com is a veteran-owned business where 100% of the proceeds goes to disabled veterans and veteran organizations. Support your veterans by purchasing a shirt at TrumpShirt.com. Use the promo code TLA and get free shipping. That's TrumpShirt.com, promo code TLA.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story with Robert Wiggs. But first, I want to give a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project and all the awesome work they're doing honoring our fallen heroes. I encourage you to visit their website, tillvalhallaproject.com, and see what they're all about. Also, don't forget to go visit the Lost Art website. That's the lostart.podbean.com. Go check it out, see what's going on there. And also click on that merchandise tab. Go get you some cool gear to help support the podcast and getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. To all the listeners, thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. I can't believe how much support we're getting from you guys. So please, thank you, and just keep on supporting us and help us getting our veteran voices out. All right, with that, I got Rob here. Rob, how are you doing today?
Oh, outstanding. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I can't complain at all. We get to come on here and a couple of veterans sit around and hear a story. So I'm excited about it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, Rob, let's start at the very beginning for you. Like, where'd you grow up, and then how did you get into military service?
Well, I really didn't know that. I really didn't know anything about the Marine Corps, to be honest with you. My dad was in the Air Force. I had an uncle that was in the Army. But I'd went to college for a year. Couldn't wait to get the hell out of the house. Went to college for a year. After a year, GPA of 1.4, they wasn't asking me to come back. So then when I went right back home to where I wanted to leave from. And my dad says, well, what are you going to do now? I said, well, hell, I'll join the military. You did. He said, well, what branch? I said, well, I joined the Air Force. You did, because I really didn't know that much about any of the other ones. And so I drove to the local recruiting office, and he was on leave. So I had to drive another 20 miles to get to another Air Force recruiting office. I walked in, and he said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I'm here to join the Air Force. And he said, well, sit down and look at the boot camp book. I guess that was his sales pitch. I looked at it, and he said, what do you think? I said, well, I told you I'm here to join the Air Force. He goes, well, it'll be a 6-month waiting list. And I said, I don't care. And he goes, well, drive back up here tomorrow morning at 5, and I'll drive you downtown. So I went home. My dad told him what was going on. And he said, no, if he wants you bad enough, he's going to come here and pick you up. He said, give me 30 minutes. I'll have a recruiter here to come talk to you. Well, little I know, he called the Marine Corps recruiter. And sure enough, Staff Sergeant Stanley R. Davis drove up my driveway and on July 18th of 82 and got out in dress blues. And me and my dad was standing on the front porch. And I told him, I said, Dad, that's what I'm going to be. And he goes, well, what? He goes, see what kind of job he can get you. I said, hell, I'll peel potatoes, boy, if I can look that damn good. And then the rest was from that point. And originally I was going to be a crash crew guy, which I ended up becoming later in my career. But
Okay.
So I went down and joined the next day, the 19th of July. And
Right.
and then when then I went back to work. I was working at Hardee's then. And and there was a manager there I couldn't stand. Her name was Linda Bly. We called her Captain Bly, but she mouthed off when I said, "I'm done. I'm out of here." And she goes, "Well, give me my shirt." And I said, "Well, yeah." I took it off, threw it at her. She goes, "Well, and what the hell are you gonna do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to the Marine Corps." So I joined. So I called my recruiter. I said, "Man, I'm ready to go to boot camp." And he said, "When do you want to go?" I said, "Tomorrow." And and back then they didn't have the 5-day, wait window for HIV or anything like that. And
Right.
and my dad grew up in North Carolina, and my grandfather lived in North Carolina. I said, "Well, let me see if I can go to Paris Island, so then maybe my grandpa can come down and see me graduate."
Okay.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to. Well, we only send one person. Anything east of the Mississippi goes to Paris Island. Anything west goes to San Diego. And he said,
Right.
"Well, we only send one person a week to Paris Island. So it's going to end up being, you got to wait 13 days." So I said, "Okay, I'll wait 13 days." So I waited. Then it came
Okay.
up, time for me to go. Told everybody goodbye, go down there. They said, "Wiggs, San Diego." I said, "No, let's go to Paris Island." And they said, "Well, we're not sending anybody this week, so you had to wait 13 more days." I said, "Screw that. Just send me." So, and then I ended up going to boot camp. And I'd never flown in my life until I went to boot
Yeah.
camp. And really,
Wow.
I'd, I'd left one time in '76 to go to North Carolina to see my grandfather. But other than that, I'd never really left the state of Missouri. I mean, I just grew up in
Hmm.
Kansas City and Independence area. And my dad was a real strong disciplinarian, so really the
Right.
Marine Corps, all I had to do was learn the rules and how to play the game. I mean, the strictness, I grew up underneath that. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
no, I started out, I was an infantry guy, 0311. And well, what happened was when I went back down, when I moved my ship date up, because I was originally wasn't supposed to go to boot camp till November, I
Right.
lost my contract for
Mm.
um, crash crew. And
Right.
my
Yeah.
recruiter says, "Well, we can put you in this other program. It's called the solar program." And I said, "What the hell's the solar program?" He goes, "That means you're qualified for any MOS under the sun." And which was a bullshit line. But so sure enough, I ended up going to open contract for 3 years. And
Yeah.
and then sure enough, I ended up being an infantry guy. And I was in 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines at Camp Point
Okay.
on Pendleton. But to tell you the truth, though, I'm glad I started that way, because it gave me a
Yeah.
complete different perspective. And then whenever in '85, when I moved um, to crash crew, all the grunts, they can't stand the wing. What was your MOS?
I was in the band actually, so
Oh,
it
okay, okay.
it might even be worse than the air wing.
Yeah, but I tell you, well, I was a grunt for almost 4 years. I spent about a
Hmm.
year and a half of that in a sniper platoon, but
Oh,
we were
nice.
always gone, always gone.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then my wife at that time got pregnant with my oldest son, and then I ended up moving '85. Ended up going to school um, in Millington, Tennessee, right outside of Memphis, and then from there they sent me to Cherry Point, North Carolina. And I
Got
mean,
it.
just the difference, the ground and the wing was all night and day, night and day.
Oh, yeah, it
I mean,
is.
a
Yeah.
corporal in the grunts is getting more respect than a staff sergeant in a wing. And when I
Yeah.
first got, I was like, I couldn't believe it. But I mean, it was, eh, the grunts was a
It's
good time though. I mean, it was open squad based still at that time. We still had uh, there was a bunch of Vietnam vets that were in my battalion.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
oh yeah, there was one guy. His name is Gunny Coder. I was in India Company. Then I ended up going to Headquarters Service Company, but he was in Kilo Company. He was one of the company gunnies uh, for Kilo Company, and
Right.
he was one of the flamethrowers, one of the last flamethrowers from Vietnam. And
Wow.
and in the back of the Humvee, or I mean, not Humvee, but they didn't have them back then. The back of the I'm trying to think here. Um, Amtrak's. The back of the Amtrak's,
Okay.
one of the tanks exploded, and there was only 3 of them that made it out alive. And his face was he had some burn, and his ear was burnt pretty bad. But there was a
Yeah.
hole right here, and he used to carry a government pen in his ear. And then when he'd come to sign it, he'd pull it out, sign it, and then he'd put it back in his ear. But I mean, nobody gave that guy any crap. But good dude. What turned out was I ended up running into him after I retired because I was a PFC. No, I was private then when he was a gunny,
Yeah.
and he ended up retiring as a sergeant major. He just lives about an hour south from where I am. I think the last
Oh,
time
no
I seen him
kidding.
was about a year ago. But oh yeah,
Wow.
same guy. But oh, he's one of them. If there's something jacked up with you, even civilian clothes, and say,
Yeah.
oh, he'll light you up. But then there was another guy, First Sergeant Black. He was in our weapons company. He played for the Raiders in '60,
Oh, wow.
and then when
Whoa.
Vietnam started kicking up, he left the NFL and went to the Marine Corps. And
Wow.
and then he his ankles were, I mean, big old guy, and his ankles were messed up. But somebody threw a grenade in his foxhole, and he tried to jump out, and the shrapnel went in his ankles. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but it, and then there was another guy in supply that he was in the Marine Corps for about 6 years. He was in Vietnam, and then he got out. And then after 10 years, he came back in the Marine Corps. And
Oh,
his
wow.
dad, uh, when he was in Vietnam, him and his dad, they were both in the Marine Corps at the same time, and they were both in Vietnam at the same time.
No
And
kidding. Wow.
he got shot, and then they medevaced him to a staging point, and they set him down. He said he was laying there on a gurney, and the guy next to him said, "Brother, don't worry about it, man. We're going to be good." And he looked over, and it was his dad. They both
What?
had gotten shot, and they were laying right next to each other. And but
Holy cow.
yeah, his dad was a drill instructor as a PFC because he went in
Oh,
the
wow.
late 50s. And
Yeah.
but yeah, his dad ended up getting out, but then he ended up going back in after 10 years. Yeah, I told
Holy cow.
myself if I ever got out, I'd never went back in. But
Yeah.
I knew a couple guys that did. But and then we had another guy, real tall, skinny, light skinned black guy named Gunny Cook. Was in
Okay.
Vietnam, and
Wow.
we were out in Twin Island Palms, and we're sitting around the fire, and he started telling us stories, about Vietnam, and all of
Right.
a sudden he just started ducking and stuff, and we was like, what the heck is up with this guy? And turned out was he said you'd be sitting there, and on the radio, the Vietnamese would come over the radio, and they say, "Oh, GI Cook, you died tonight." And he said a lot of dudes would flip out because they were saying their name. They felt like they were looking
Wow.
right at them. But yeah, a lot of those guys when I first got it. I mean, when I first got to the grunts, it was about like my dad when I was growing up
Yeah.
was you didn't speak unless he spoke to you. And
Right.
then if he asks you a question, it's because he's giving you the answer too. And that's the way it
Yeah.
was when I first got into grunts because I graduated boot camp as a private. But
Yeah.
but no,
So,
other than that, I mean, I lat moved in '85, went to the wing, um, and I went on float with the grunts. I went on 2 Westpacks.
how was
Um,
that for you? Were those good or good
oh yeah,
experience?
well we went to Okie first,
Hmm.
and basically it was back then it was a BLT. It's not for a long time ago. Prior to that, it was the Mew. Green
Hmm.
expeditionary unit. Then they went to what they call the BLTs, which are the battalion
Right.
landing teams.
Mm-hmm.
And then right as I got ready to leave the grunts, they were going back to the MEU. And
Oh, okay.
so the CO, when I got ready to leave, his name was Lieutenant Colonel Mad Dog Tilley is what this guy's name was. And
Okay.
all troops all the way. I mean, the guy was just
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. And he we used to go on, we used to start humping at 6 o'clock at night on a Thursday night, and we do 15, 18 miles working up for the McCrest. And
Yeah.
and then we get done about 3 or 4 in the morning, and basically we just had to wake up the next morning and clean our gear, and we were off for the rest of the weekend. And
Nice.
so, but every time he'd have the chaplain say a prayer before we started, and then and then we got back, and the chaplain would say another prayer, when we got back. Well, one night
Mm-hmm.
the chaplain, he didn't go with us, so we got back on the parade deck, and he goes, well, the chaplain's not here today or tonight, so I'll say the prayer. Everybody bow your heads. And he said, now I'll lay me down to sleep, Marine Corps emblem at my feet, eagle globe and anchor in my hand as I strive for the promised land. God bless Chesty Puller. Fall out, man. And the guy
That
was,
is awesome.
he was phenomenal. And then I ended up lap moving and leaving, and then went to the wing, and then I was in the wing for about 8 years, and then I did about 2 years as a career planner. Well, they sent
Oh,
me
wow.
that I was in Yuma, Arizona, and
Mm-hmm.
so that they sent me to back to Camp Pendleton, because I
Mm-hmm.
went from Pendleton to Cherry Point, North Carolina, Yuma, Arizona, then Yuma,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, back to Pendleton. Well, they sent me to Supply Battalion, which there was like 1,200 guys in Supply Battalion, and we
Wow.
had the CO was he was a full bird, Colonel Kelly, and awesome guy. I mean, another guy, all the way troops, just take care of the troops. And but no, he used to come out when he'd bring on Fridays. He'd PT probably it'd be about 1,000 to 1,100 of us showing up for PT, and we'd all run in a
Wow.
freaking in a formation. And I mean, the chaplain, he was a Catholic chaplain. I mean, this guy was
Yeah.
62 years old, and he was still out there running with us, just like every other guy. And
Wow.
but no, the colonel, he'd get up there and he'd say, man, what is today? And he didn't want you to say, today's, August 3rd, 2024. No,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
wanted to hear, today is another glorious day in the Marine Corps, where every day is a holiday, every formation is like a family reunion, and every meal is like a banquet. And the guy was, and turned out was that this was, well, my younger son went in the Marine Corps in '05. So,
Uh-huh.
and I retired in '02. So 3 years after I retired, I went out to see my kid graduate from boot camp, and we went
Yeah.
down to Del Mar to the tracks. And I was walking into the front of the horse tracks, and
Uh-huh.
sure enough, there was Colonel Kelly. I
Wow.
ran into him, and I said, "Sir, you're Colonel Kelly, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah," because he got selected for 1 star,
Uh-huh.
and they and his wife had died from cancer prior to him uh getting the change of command.
Right.
And he says, well, can I still hang with the troops, because he had combat engineers build a beer garden
Nice.
right outside his office, and
Yeah.
every Friday at 1500 he'd pay for a keg to be delivered. Any troop wanted to go up and have a beer with the colonel, they could be up there at 1500 and have a beer with the colonel. And
That's cool.
so they said, no, not as a general, you can't hang with the troops. He goes, well, then you know what, I don't need it. So he retired. and he
Yeah.
retired as a full bird colonel. And I said, I was in your battalion. He goes, yeah, you were in supply battalion. You was my career planner. And it was wild that guy remembered me because I was there
Wow.
in 90. When was I there? See, 90. So it had to been, see, 88, 91. It must have been 92. No,
Yeah.
91. 91 is when,
Wow.
right. And he remembered me. And
That's incredible.
I was only in his battalion for like 2 months. And I mean, the
No
guy had
kidding.
he just, and we sat there and talked for a few minutes and everything. And, but I mean, it was wild that I hadn't seen this guy. And I hadn't seen this guy in, oh, shoot. Well, it was probably 13 years. But,
Yeah.
no,
Wow.
the,
Now, is that the Colonel Kelly? Was he a part of not the Nice Guys organization? Do you know if it's that Kelly?
no,
'Cause I think there was one. Okay.
that I really
I'll
don't
have to
know.
look it up.
He's a real big, tall Irish guy. But,
I think that's who it is, but I'm not 100% certain.
yeah, and I'm not for sure if he lives in California. I mean, well, shoot, it's been years now, but he was probably, he might have been in his 60s then. So shoot, yeah, he's got to be in his 80s, something now. Because I mean, that was I. It's hard to believe I've been retired longer now than I was in,
Yeah.
and which is
Time's flying
unbelievable.
by, huh?
Oh yeah, but
Wow. Well, hey,
no,
kind of, if you don't
go ahead.
mind, can you go back right when you went from infantry, right? So you lived the infantry life, you're going to now the air wing life. Kind of talk,
Right.
what were the big differences for you as you transitioned into that?
Well, the I look at it, I've been on all three sides of the Marine Corps because I was on the
Hmm.
ground side, I was on the air side, and then I was on the FSSG side, Fleet
Hmm.
Service Support Group. That because that's where I was a career planner.
Gotcha.
But now, now it's not even FSSG; it's something logistics group or something now. But
Yeah,
um,
MLG, I think is what it is now.
yeah, something like that. But um, you had the grunts. These are the rules, and there is no deviant from it. I mean,
Hmm.
you do what the heck you're told at the split second you get told. It's just like drill, you know.
Hmm.
And then the wing is the complete opposite. They're gonna go by the rules, to a certain extent, but like the haircuts. Well, it's
Yeah,
zero
yeah,
to three, and you can. Oh, there's so many guys I knew that they look like fenders on a car where they cut just around the ears, but they have the hair long. Oh, and I think that's the reason the grunts couldn't stand them. When we were on float on the same ship with them, he couldn't stand them. But then the FSSG guys, they were kind of lukewarm, where,
yeah.
well, these are the rules. We're going to go by them today, but tomorrow, we're not going to go by them tomorrow. And
Right.
it was just up and down. But it was it. I wouldn't say it was as big of a transition from when I retired to civilian life,
Uh-huh.
but it took some getting used to. I mean,
Yeah.
because when I got to the wing, I was a corporal, and I seen lance corporals that would be like dogging on a sergeant, and I asked the sergeant, I'm like, "How you let that lance corporal kind of freaking bust on?" He goes, "Well, I mean, what could I do, man? I'm only a sergeant in the wing." I was like, "What?" Because in the
It's a
grunts,
different
oh,
mentality.
in the grunts, you wouldn't let a lance corporal even talk to a senior lance corporal that way, let alone a
Yeah.
damn NCO. I mean, because in the grunts, you've seen staff sergeants, and you never seen a gunny, unless the
Yeah.
company gunny came out in front of the formation. But you had a platoon sergeant was the staff sergeant, but you didn't deal with him. You
Hmm.
dealt with the corporals and the sergeants.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
but over there it was, oh no, it was completely different. And then
Hmm.
really it all depended on the individual in the FSSG, if they were a strong-willed individual, whatever. But
Right.
but no, it was. it was definitely it was like more of a job on the air wing side instead of a
Yeah.
way of life like it was on the
Right.
grunt
Yeah.
side. But
Interesting. And then you said you went, was it crash fire rescues what you were doing?
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Seventy
Now,
fifty left, 70 51.
how did you like doing that?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I mean, I got to the point fighting fires because
Hmm.
basically, if aircraft crashed on the airfield, the silver suit
Yep.
guy, that's what we did.
Yep.
But then we also did structural firefighting. We would support the base, or when I was at Bogue Field in North Carolina, we
Hmm.
were the structural fire department for the base. It's just an auxiliary landing field,
Yeah.
and then we also did hazmat too. So,
Okay.
which now our school, we used to go to school, like I said, outside of Memphis, which now
Hmm.
they with the Navy. Now the Navy does theirs in Pensacola, and the Marine Corps, Army, and the Air Force all do theirs now at Goodfellow Air Force Base in
Ah,
down in Texas.
okay.
But
Interesting.
and they go through a 3 month academy, which is structural aircraft and hazmat. But
Wow.
me fighting fire to me was better than the best cold beer you could drink. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a rush, and
Hmm.
but then the only thing is when I retired, I was 39, and
Hmm.
fire departments, if you're a day over 34, they ain't gonna touch you. So when I
Really?
retired, I mean, I could be on a volunteer fire department, but I couldn't be
Hmm.
a paid guy. So I mean, it was like
Wow.
being a fish out of water. Now you got to start all over to try to learn something new, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
made it kind of even a bigger transition whenever I retired. But
Hmm.
that and
Wow.
I don't know how the TAP class is now, but the transition assistance program back then, uh, that and even when I was a military field rep for a tech school that I helped, I'd go to the active duty bases and talk to the TAP classes about them going to
Hmm.
tech school. Um, they were still telling them, "Oh man, just wait until you get out. People are just going to be tripping over their feet trying to give you a job." And no, it does not work that way. And
Yeah.
but then now I don't know if it's changed since then because I left. I used to work for Wyotech, and they
Hmm.
taught guys how to be automotive, diesel, collision, motorcycle, marine mechanics, and they
Hmm.
could use their GI Bill to go to school. And they had
Very
a job
nice.
placement rate of 88.9%, and
Wow.
the other 11% is because they didn't want a job, you know.
Yeah.
And but then the government pretty much ran the school's still open, but there's only one campus now up in Laramie, Wyoming. But
Okay.
that was a great experience too because I was able to still go back and work with active duty guys that were getting ready to
Yeah.
get out. But
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Well, I will say that they have come a long way when it comes to transitioning, getting out, and stuff like that. So that, like the TAPS class, and I can't remember what they call it now, but that whole class, you have to take it like a year out. Like that's what they're saying. 1 year
right,
out, you need to take it, and then they tell you take it again. So take it at a year, and then take it again at 6 months. There's no limit in how many times you can take it. And then there's different levels of it and things like that. So like if there's one, like if you're going to go to college, there's one if you're going to go to a trade school. There's it just all depends.
right.
But they're really neat. They got some good stuff going nowadays. And then there's tons and tons of organizations out there now. And that, doing the podcast, I'm starting to meet more and more people. It's amazing how many organizations are out there. I had no idea that they all existed to help veterans get jobs. But there's a
Now,
lot of them.
what year did you retire?
I just retired this year in February.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
because when I retired in '02, the TAP class was about 2.5 days. That was it. And
Yeah.
they'd help you do your resume, and then they gave you a class on how to do interviews. Then they do a couple of practice interviews, and then VA would come in. They'd or it was a rep came in, kind of explained, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if you're going to put if you're going to put in for any disability or anything. And
Right.
other than that, you got any questions? No. Okay, you're done. That was it. I mean,
Yeah.
there was they had a they had a couple deals where you could put your job, your resume and stuff like that. But they're really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, even because see, I left. See here, 2016 is when I started working with Wyotech and doing the tap class, or I'd go in and do the tap classes. And I used to
Right.
cover 13 states. I mean, I covered one of my active duty bases was Fort Seal.
Oh,
And
no kidding.
yep, went to Fort Seal twice a month for the tap class. Fort Hood also did. No, I
Mm-hmm.
take it back.
Wow.
Fort Seal they had one tap class a month.
Okay.
No, they did two a month. That's right. But then at the end, they were doing it every week. But at Fort Hood, they had which now they renamed it. I don't know what the hell they renamed it, but
Yeah, yeah, I
at
got nothing on
Fort
that.
Hood, Fort Hood, they had a tap class going every week, but they had 6 different tap classes in that week because there were so many guys that
Yeah.
were getting out. I mean, there was a couple of guys that I talked to, and you know, and a lot of guys they'd get up there and oh man, they was just trying to sell big time. Oh, my school's great. This, you know, we had 15 minutes, and
Yeah.
I got up there and spoke to them for about 10 minutes on reality, and then
Yeah.
I spoke the last 5 minutes on about my school
Yeah.
because you know because I told them and I would my boys they tell me all the time I'm one of them real blunt guys, probably
Mm-hmm.
not at all close to being politically correct, but you know,
You
and
fit in
but
well right here then.
yeah, everybody knows exactly where I'm on whatever situation. They're going to know where I'm standing, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I used to tell them, I said, you know what? There's everybody in this tab class. Oh, every one of you guys are in a group. You're in one of 3 groups. I said a bunch of you are going to get out there and not know, and are going to get out there and watch things happen. The other section, you guys are going to get out there and make things happen. But I said the
Mm-hmm.
majority of you suckers are going to get out there and you ain't going to know what the hell happened. And that was the biggest thing I told them. I said because especially these guys that I mean, there was one guy came up and he talked to me one day at the table. We were right there. We could set up a table on the same floor at Hood where they were getting their DD 214,
Oh,
and
nice.
guy was a sergeant, and he said, "Yeah, I thought I'd check it out." And I said, "When's your EAS? I think there's the Army's ETS, whatever it is."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, it's tomorrow." I said, "Well, I mean, have you been checking stuff out or anything?" He goes, "Nah, not really." He said, "I just thought I'd take a look at it." I'm like, "Do you got a family?" He goes, "Yeah, I got a wife and 3 kids." I said, "How can you be a loser like that?" I said, "That your wife and 3 kids have been they're supporting you this whole damn time, and now it's your turn to give something back to them, and you ain't even started to look." He goes, "Hey man,
Wow.
I got welfare and unemployment to fall back on if I have to." I said, "Thank God you get now." I said, "I'm surprised you even got promoted to sergeant." He goes, "Man, hey, I don't like to take that kind of language." I said, he goes, "You don't rate to talk to me like that." I said, "Well, first off, your wife, you may have a wife and 3 kids today, but I said 6 months after you get out, you might not." And he was pissed off at me. I said, "But dude, this is
Yeah.
reality here." I said, "Trust me, man, it's not a kind life out here. That
Mm-hmm.
life will chew you up and spit you out quicker than your eyes can spin."
Yeah.
And I said, "And if you don't adapt," I said, "it's just like the military. If you don't go one direction, you got to be able to freaking spin and go another direction." I said, "Either
Yeah.
that or you just give up on yourself." And I've seen so many of those guys, just they didn't care. And oh, I don't even know what this generation is now. I mean, shoot, these kids don't even want to work. But
Yeah.
but now, I mean, I call it the 15-minute war, the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
By the time we started floating more of I got in a day I was supposed to leave for Iraq. I got in a motorcycle accident,
Oh, no.
and some lady whipped out and hit me, and I was in the emergency room when they ran me missing movement because they called
Oh,
my name.
no.
Yeah, because we had PT'd that morning, and I rode my motorcycle home to shower up, and then I was heading back, and that's when I got the motorcycle accident. Well, then I
Yeah.
didn't. They called my name. I wasn't there, so they ran me missing movement. Then somebody ended up
Oh,
finding
my
out
God.
I was in the emergency room, and messed up my back, my hip, my neck, and
Oh,
well,
man.
then I finally got back up on my feet, and I'm slated to go, and then it was over with. So
Yeah.
so then after that, when I was at Pendleton as a career planner, then we ended up Somalia cropped up.
Mm.
So I ended up going to Somalia in December 10th of '92, and then left there
Oh,
in
wow.
April of '93. But I mean, I'd been to 15 different countries, but man, Philippines is pretty nasty, third world country, but Somalia was definitely the worst. And the
Really?
only one above Somalia was Kenya, because we went down to Mombasa, Nairobi, Kenya too. And if you ever watched Black Hawk Down, that's
Yep.
exactly the way it was over there. Yeah, because you
Wow.
didn't know. I mean, there's 4 clans over there, and they've been
Mm-hmm.
fighting for 300 years. And and whatever clan had the most weapons, they ran the country. And
Oh, wow.
Bahrain was running it during Desert Storm 1, and then we couldn't support them at that time because we're in the middle of Desert Storm 1. Well, then
Mm-hmm.
General Adid ran a coup and ran Bahrain down into Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
and then his clan took over, and a lot of people didn't realize that General Adid's son, he was in the Marine Corps, and he hit the
Yeah.
beach against his own father on December
Oh, are
10th.
you serious?
Yeah,
No
he
kidding.
was
I
in
didn't know
with
that.
us, and
Wow.
which now General Adid, he died 18 years ago. Now his son got out of the Marine Corps, and he's back there running that clan. FSSG-4, the unit I was with, we flew in, and the grunts from the 11th MEU had hit the beach. They hit the beach on the 9th of December when we flew in on the 10th. So we were there right
Mm-hmm.
behind them. And some of the guys I talked to, because they had taken the port, and they had spent the night, well, in the big warehouse where they end up putting a lot of the people, especially the
Mm-hmm.
army was in there too. um, it was nothing but sheep shit and animal. I mean, just all kind. And Marines slept in there overnight. Got diphtheria overnight, just staying there overnight. It was so nasty. But no, they said there was so many news cameras on the beach that they couldn't even get onto the beach because of the news people when they were trying to hit the
Wow.
beach. And but then we end up marrying up with them, and then basically once we came down and took over the port, then they left, and well, they left there and went up to the airport, and then we took over the airport and took over the stadium, which is
Mm-hmm.
when Black Hawk Down was where the soccer stadium was.
Right.
I was with them when we took over the embassy. But I mean, there was
Mm.
hundreds of thousands that had died, and they were only burying them 18 inches under the ground. I mean, the
No kidding.
stench, and it'd be 110 degrees by 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was just hot as
God.
hell. And it was really weird
Wow.
because show you how third world country this place was. There was these dome hooches right across the little dirt path from the cemeteries. and those were leopard colonies. People still had leprosy. I'm like,
Wow.
what? That's the stuff you read about in the Bible. Yeah,
Yeah, no kidding.
they were that far back, and I mean, there was well, General Adid, his compounds would have electricity, and that was very scarce. Other than that, there was no electricity in the whole country, and
Wow.
Mogadishu was one of the one cities that was actually had some technology and stuff, and
Right.
Belladego, Baidoa, Kismayu down south, none of them had that. And it was wild to the point. And a lot, I'll never forget, we were flying over, and this one guy, he was from Detroit, and a black guy is from Detroit. And well, when I was in the Marine Corps, he was either light green or dark green, but everybody
Yeah.
was green.
Yeah.
Then near when I got ready to retire, they said, "Oh, you can't say that anymore. That
Mm-hmm.
no, you can't do that." I'm like, "What?" And so what happened was, we're sitting there talking. This guy, he goes, "Man, we're going to the motherland." I said, "What are you talking?" He goes, "Man, we're going to Africa." So then we get over there and we land. I run into him a couple of days later. I said, "Hey, man, how's the motherland?" He goes, "Man, screw this damn place. I'm from Detroit." He's oh he was he said, "Hell with that." But I mean, it. And the first 3.5 weeks, we didn't have showers,
Oh
and I
yeah.
mean, but the good thing was, I mean, we all stunk. So I
Yeah.
mean, there was no wash. I mean, you did a freaking water buffalo freaking bath, but I mean, other than that, and that wasn't good. But and then about 3.5 weeks into it is when the Seabees came in, and they
Okay.
they brought in shower units, and well, then you had your 2-minute shower. They turn the water on for 1 minute, you
Yeah.
get wet, then they turn it off, you soap up, and then they turn it on for one more minute. And
Nice.
this day, my wife, I mean, I could take a shower in 3 minutes and I'm out. I ain't no
Yeah.
40-minute shower guy, but no, that, and then just finally got to the point we turned it over to the Army, and then from
Yeah.
there it was, but I mean, all the clan, none of them, they didn't wear any Army uniforms, so we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't disseminate what clan who was good, or well, there really wasn't too many of them good, but there was, you could tell some of them that were worse, were more bad than good. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and little kids were 8, 9, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids were toting AK-47s, and you didn't, because their
Wow.
parents died in the Civil War right before
Mm-hmm.
we got there, but everybody was over there. I mean, the the French Foreign Legion, they were the
Mm-hmm.
first ones we ran into over there. Them and the Italians, and the French Foreign Legion, they basically did whatever the hell they wanted, because I mean, they
Yeah.
were mercenaries. And
Yeah.
there was two guys that we ran into that they were American citizens. One of them was convicted of first degree murder and escaped, and then went to went to France and joined the Legion. And the other guy was going up for charges of first degree murder, and he escaped and went. And
Wow.
but yeah, and to tell you the truth, you can join the French Foreign Legion all the way up to age 55. As
No
long as you can make it
kidding.
through, as long as you can make it through their training, they don't give a hoot. And
Wow.
but it was pretty wild. And uh, then we ran into the Belgians, which I don't know why they were over there, because Africans, they couldn't stand them. And
Yeah.
well, the and that was the only time in U.S. history that a sitting president, which was Clinton at that time, put us under UN command.
Mm.
It was in '93, and
Yeah.
well, the the UN troops, they were worthless. I mean, they had the light blue helmets, but as soon as rounds were coming down
Mm-hmm.
range, man, you never seen any of them guys. And most of them were Pakistani or from India. and their
Yeah.
chevrons, the chevron wasn't even sewn on. They were just had a safety pin holding their chevrons on.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it was that, and they had old
Wow.
decadent weapons, but yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty wild seeing. And these Belgium guys, they wanted them to go down to Kismayu, which is about 375 miles south, and
Mm-hmm.
the UN did. And they go, well, we'll go down there as long as we can do whatever the hell we want to do, kill whoever we want to kill, and you're going to pay us this much money. And the UN said, okay. So they sent them down there.
No
And
kidding. Wow.
they had, I mean, they had some pretty, they had weapons. Have you ever seen that stormtrooper movies? Those futuristic
Yeah.
weapons. They had some
Yeah.
weapons that looked like that stuff. And this was in the, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
early 90s. But no, I'd gotten passed over.
Wow.
I'd gotten passed over for staff sergeant. And from 91 to 93 was the hardest time you could stay in the Marine Corps, because
Okay.
they were finding, because
Yeah.
it was right after Desert Storm 1. We were at 275,000,
Mm-hmm.
and Clinton was cutting us back to
Yep.
174,000. So we lost 101,000 Marines in
Mm-hmm.
3 years. And basically, if you were a sergeant and you got in trouble as a private, you were gone. They were
Yeah.
looking to find anything under the sun to put you out. And a lot of good
Wow.
Marines, man. I couldn't believe it. A lot of good Marines, man, end up not letting them stay.
To all the listeners out there, just like Rob was saying, reach out to your buddies, check on them, see how they're doing, those types of things. And if you're out there struggling and need some help, you can always reach out to the VA. You can dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those options can be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But one veteran life lost is one too many. I care about you. Rob cares about you. The entire veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. With that, Rob, one last time, thanks for coming on. To all the listeners, stay motivated, change your socks.